Welcome to the 2005 edition of the awards dinner of the Tyler Prize for Achievement in Environmental Science, Policy, Energy, and Health. I'm Owen Lind, the Secretary of the Executive Committee, and will be serving as your Master of Ceremonies this evening. For some of you, this is a little unusual to see me standing up here. For the past almost 20 years, we have had a Master of Ceremonies who was much more distinguished, much more eloquent, Robert Sullivan. We fully anticipated Bob would be here with us this evening. 10 days ago, very suddenly, death took Bob. It was a shock to us. It's a time of sadness, and we want to have Bob in our thoughts throughout this evening. He was active in the committee right up until the very last moment. He was very active in the program that brought us our laureates together this evening. Now, if you knew Bob, he would say, "That's enough. Let's get on with it." Tonight is really a time of celebration, a time of rejoicing in the outstanding science in the field of the environment that is being represented here this evening. So keeping Bob and his wishes in mind, we're going to proceed with our dinner, and we're going to rejoice and celebrate with our laureates this evening. We're going to pause for a moment here now while the outstanding staff of this hotel serves the first course, and then, as Bob insisted, we don't waste time. We carry out our program very quickly. We don't have after-dinner speeches that you can sleep through. So if you've not been here before, you'll know that once you get your appetizer, we're going to start the program. But in the meantime, we'll take a few minutes break here while the staff of this very fine hotel service our appetizers and our wine. Thank you. Good evening again. I warned you that this was coming. On behalf of the Executive Committee of the Tyler Prize for Environmental Achievement, we do welcome you to this ceremony. This is the 32nd year of the life of the prize. We have been around a long time. It's an honor for us to have you join us at this time as we honor these very worthy recipients of this prize. The prize was conceived in the early 1970s by John Tyler and his wife Alice as they recognized a need to call awareness to the environmental degradation that they observed around them. John Tyler had grown up pretty much as a country person and appreciated the out of doors, and had moved to California and had become quite successful in his career and began to see deterioration around him. He was sensitive to this. In the 1960s and early 70s, of course, environmental awareness was something that was just beginning to dawn on most people's thinking. We had had traditional conservation, of course, for many, many years. But to think of the environment as a totality, as it affected our lives, was a new thing. John Tyler and Alice, recognizing this, established a prize that would call attention to people who were making exceptional contributions toward the solution of environmental problems of all type: scientific, political, educational. It is one of the oldest of the environmental prizes, if not the oldest, and in many people's thinking, still the most prestigious of the world prizes. Is there anyone here who was present at the first presentation in 1974? One. This is pink. Anybody else? Two. This was the first year we recognized outstanding science. If you'll notice in your souvenir program or commemorative program, whatever we should call that the recipients were quite diverse. We recognized outstanding basic science. We recognized extremely fine applied science, and for you people in California are well aware of the work of Ari Hagenschmidt. And we recognized policy, as we recognized the man who was responsible for the United Nations Environmental Program. The ceremony in 1974 was a bit different, but the main difference was in the quality of the person standing at the podium. It was then Governor Ronald Reagan. So, although you've had a deterioration in the quality of your MC, the quality of the laureates has stood firm and is certainly equal this year to any of those that we have had over the years past. Over the past 31 years of the prize, we have honored 55 total laureates. They have been passionate in their work in a great variety of environmental fields. If you read through the laureates in the back of the program, you'll see the diversity of the fields represented, from areas of environmental health, COOP, as you're well familiar with, in terms of smoking and health, from environmental policy, as I've mentioned, from fundamental and basic science to extremely applied science in areas of water and air and earth. Tonight, we honor our 56th and 57th laureates, Professors Lonnie Thompson and David Keeling. They are individuals who are equally passionate and dedicated in their work. Their life's work has been the scientific quest to document and understand the important chemical and physical changes that are occurring in the Earth's system, and how these changes are driven spatially and temporally, and what are the underlying mechanisms of these changes, and specifically how we can attribute these changes to natural causes or to human causes. Yesterday at the University of Southern California, each of them presented a superb lecture giving an overview of their research, and this is a lecture that was attended, of course, primarily by the next generation of the world's environmental scientists. These young people were challenged, and we trust that in a few years we'll be recognizing some of them for their excellent accomplishments. The individuals that we're honoring tonight honor us by their fine science and bring further credit to the Tyler Prize for Environmental Achievement. Alice Tyler, who when she was alive, took great interest personally in the laureates and their lives and their works. She called the laureates at that time the guardians of the future, and indeed that is correct. Every year as we gather to make these awards to our new laureates, we honor John and Alice Tyler for their great contributions, for their foresight, for their generosity in establishing the prize. I'm welcoming each of you as our distinguished guests. Many of you are family of the laureates, friends of the laureates, supporters of the research, and others who are simply very interested in the environmental situation in which we find ourselves. Now, I'd like to take a few moments and make a few introductions and acknowledging some of the people who've been very important in this prize. Among these are the Tyler Prize Executive Committee. These are the people who work hard, give of themselves without restriction, give of themselves in their time and their talents, and without compensation, I should mention, and study, and I mean really study, the nomination materials. Some of you would not realize, cannot appreciate the amount of documentation that has to be dealt with as we search the validity of these nominations. and confirm these nominations to ascertain that we indeed are recognizing the very finest people in the field, the most worthy candidates for this prize. We have multiple meetings during the year. We attend to the ordinary business of the prize. These people serve well and long, and they certainly should be introduced this evening. I'm going to ask them to stand as I call out their name. If you'll hold their applause until they're all standing, you'll stand, remain standing, and then we'll recognize them after they're all on their feet. First is Robert Frosch. Robert is a senior fellow in the John F. Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University. Arturo Gomez Pompa, university professor at the University of California at Riverside, and also, I should mention, the 1994 Tyler Prize laureate. You notice he has one of the very nice gold medals. Sherwood Rowland, the Donald Breen Professor of Chemistry at the University of California, Irvine, 1983 Tyler Prize laureate, also with a very nice medal, and we cannot omit the fact that he was also the 1995 Nobel laureate in chemistry. Cornelius Sullivan, Vice President for Research at the University of Southern California. And then I'm going to add another person, Dr. Jim Maloney. Jim? Louis Beaumont Professor of Surgery Emeritus at the University of Southern California. Jim, this is a special, unanticipated recognition because Jim was a member of the prize committee for many years, served us diligently and well, an outstanding gentleman, an outstanding student of the nominees. And last year, much to our dismay, he tendered his resignation. With the loss of our chairman, we need additional personnel. 30 minutes ago in the hall, by the lapels, Jim has agreed to return for a one-year stint as a member of the committee. So let's welcome these members of the committee. Thank you. Thank you, colleagues. I should also acknowledge some very other important people who are with us this evening. We have with us some trustees of the Alice Tyler Perpetual Trust. I would appreciate if you would also stand as I call your name. Mr. and Mrs. Anders Brown, the back table back there, and Mr. Paul Libidary. Paul, we thank you for helping to support Alice's other charitable interests. These are members of the Charitable Trust, and we appreciate their attendance every year at this program. There are some other people that need to be recognized here tonight, some people that we're delighted to have join us in our program. So we'll call some names here and ask you to stand, and then we'll recognize them. Dr. Charles Cannell, Director of the Scripps Institution of Oceanography at the University of California at San Diego. Also, a rather large contingent, I understand, from Scripps came along as well. Dr. Richard Freeman, who's the Dean of the College of Mathematical and Physical Sciences at the Ohio State University. Professor Barry Lyons, who's director of the Byrd Polar Research Center at The Ohio State University. And then the person who has come the farthest to honor our awardees this evening, Dr. Yao Tangdong, who is director of the Institute of Tibetan Plateau Research in Beijing, China. Dr. Roberto Pecci, who is the Vice Chancellor of Research at the University of California, Los Angeles. Dr. Ray Bradley, Director of the Climate Research System, the Research Center at the University of Massachusetts. Not quite as far as Canada, but a long ways as China. Dr. Susan Bryant Dean, the School of Biological Sciences of the University of California at Irvine, the Dean of the college. Dr. Jody Holt, Chair of the Department of Botany at the University of California, Riverside, over here. And Dr. Ken Fulton, the Executive Director of the National Academy of Sciences. Thank you for joining us this evening. We're honored by your presence. For many years, the Tyler Executive Committee has been outstandingly well served by the University of Southern California as the prize administrator. They deal with the daily dirty work of managing the prize, particularly the money aspects, the legal aspects, and we turn to them so often. This evening, I'd like to call on Dr. Donald Manahan, who's Dean for Research in the College of Letters, Arts, and Sciences of the University of Southern California, to join me in welcoming each of you on behalf of the University of Southern California. Dr. Manahan.
This is indeed a great privilege and honor for me. I've actually had the privilege and honor of doing this several years now. I will welcome you, please, on behalf of the University of Southern California and the College of Letters, Arts, and Sciences, where I am currently the Dean of Research. Now, I've had the privilege of being here on and off for about 20 years at Tyler Prizes. And for many years, right behind me here stood Bob Sullivan when I did this. And I can't help but think this evening how I miss my fellow Irish drinking buddy over dinner. But Bob, wherever you are, I promise I'll have one for you this evening. But also over these 20 years that I've attended the prize, you know, let me be real frank with you, off the record, as they say. I have been waiting for these folks to win the prize for a long, long time. Professionally, as a scientist, I'm basically a biochemist in terms of my own personal research, but it's brought me to many environments, including Antarctica, including to the South Pole, standing at the South Pole beside the Clean Air Facility where measurements of CO2 have been ongoing for almost 50 years. And so to me, Professor Keeling has been sort of a living legend. And so to have the honor to have dinner with him tonight is really very personally very special. Now, many of you may not know the details of the importance of this work, but put it very briefly, it's the following. CO2 was very low 50 years ago down here, and today, 50 years later, it's up here. And in between are a whole set of little data points, with brilliant in its simplicity of measurement in some ways, but so visionary in its importance 50 years later. We mentioned the lecture yesterday at USC to the science faculty, to students and postdocs, but this graph is so important that even third graders get it. I lectured just recently to Career Day to a group of third graders, and I showed them this graph. And without my even really explaining it, these 9 and 10-year-olds, bingo, got it in a second how important this is. And the questions afterwards were amazing. What can we do as third graders to help reduce the production of CO2? I mean, it was an amazing event. It was just here at a little local elementary school where my son attends. So this graph, which is, please make sure to read your program, because there's a lovely phrase in there by one of the letter writers that says, in the mid-90s, this was probably the only graph that was present in the White House. Now, I'll just leave that comment at that, but do read the context of that comment. It's so simple in concept and so profound as we go into the 21st century. But still, CO2 goes up. Does it matter? The second part of our brilliant duo here this evening is Dr. Thompson, who yesterday presented this incredible lecture on the impacts. And what he decided to do, brilliantly, 20-plus years ago, was to find a canary in the coal mine, to use his phrase. Where would you go and look if there was an effect of global warming? Would you go to the poles, the deep sea? Would you go to the Sahara? He brilliantly thought, but most other people had overlooked, no, let's go to the tropics. But not just the tropics, high up in the tropics, we're up to mountains where you will find glaciers. And if there's an effect, those glaciers might show you the effect. And Dr. Thompson showed us yesterday before and after photographs that literally blew my socks off. I hadn't seen them before. Here's a glacier, been there perhaps for 50,000 years. Within the lifetime of a single human, gone, 50 years. And so this combination of CO2 data from Dr. Keeling and measurements on planet Earth of potential impact of these things are opening up real rigorous debate as to what extent these issues of climate change are driven by human events, natural cycles, and the interplay between the two. My job here this evening is almost finished. I have to ask you all, please, to toast these two brilliant visionary men. And if you could please raise your glasses in honor of this evening's laureates, Dr. Keeling, Dr. Thompson. Thank you so much, and the party goes on.
Now we're almost to the serious part of the program, but there are two more introductions that we must make. This prize, the work that I pointed out of the Executive Committee of the University of Southern California, requires the assistance, very ably, of two outstanding ladies who make it all very possible. They're the people who keep the wheels turning. I would like to present to you Dr. Linda Duguay, who is the Executive Director at the USC, for the prize. And Mrs. Sue Anderson, who has a formal title, but really she is the go-to person on everything here. So, yeah.